There's an element to self-inquiry that is very much like banging your head against a wall, attempting to solve a kind of riddle. And you see this in parallel in the idea of Zen koans, which are questions that seem on their face absurd, like what is the sound of one hand clapping? And then someone meditates on it deeply for long enough, with enough intensity, and a different perspective is acquired. The question cannot be answered in the frame of reference in which it was initially posed, but there's a different kind of frame of reference that might arise if one meditates on it deeply. And in some sense, self-inquiry is a bit like that. Because this question of who am I, when one looks deeply into it, not by thinking about it, but by looking at really what the I is, right? By attempting to locate and localize what this seemingly self-evident solid sense of I is, past all the thoughts and feelings that it appears to be, something different is reached. I like to illustrate this sort of insistent riddle-like quality of self-inquiry with reference to a famous story from Indian mythology. It's the story of Prahlada. Prahlada is actually a demon. There's three different kingdoms. There's the gods or devas. There's the humans, and then there's the demons or asuras. Prahlada is actually a quote unquote demon prince, but he's actually happens to be a devout follower of Vishnu, and his father is this very tyrannical demon king who has very, very powerful special ability or boon that he acquired from doing all these rituals at one point. And that boon or special ability is that he can't be killed or any of a series of conditions obtain. So he can't be killed by human or beast. He can't be killed inside or outside. He can't be killed during day or nighttime, and so on. And so he's almost entirely immune to being killed, which is why he's so proud and vain. And so anyway, Prahlada is a devout worshiper of Vishnu, but his father doesn't want that. He wants everyone in his kingdom to worship only him. And he stalks around a room with the sun there, and he says, well, where is this Vishnu you speak of? Is he in the floor? And he stamps his foot. And is he in the wall? And he hits the wall. And then finally he says, is he in this pillar? And he smacks the pillar, and the pillar, in fact, does break. And out comes Narasimha, which is a half-lion, half-man incarnation of Vishnu, top half lion, bottom half man. And he takes Hiranyakashipu, the demon king, grabs him, takes him to the threshold between the inside and the outside of the palace, and at the very stroke of twilight, which is the dividing line between day and night, disembowels him. So pretty grisly. I like to think of this as having sort of multiple meanings, in a sense, for self-inquiry, because there is this interesting thing, first of all, where Vishnu seemingly can't be found, right? Wherever you look, where is he? Is he in the ground? Is he in the wall? Where is God? Where is God to be found? You seem to look around and you can't seem to find him. And yet there is this insistent asking, in a sense, right? I mean, it's Hiranyakashipu asking, it's like the ego asking, ironically. But finally, if it's asked insistently enough, because there is a presence of devotion, which is symbolized by Prahlada, God eventually answers. Yeah, he comes out of a pillar. Something strange about that, right? There's something miraculous about that. There's something outside of the ordinary paradigm in that. And then there's the issue as well of Hiranyakashipu's special boon, right? Neither inside nor outside may be killed, not during daytime or nighttime, not by man or beast. And what this is symbolizing is the ego is occupying all the categories of thinking, right? Where is this God? It can't be in any of these categories. The ancient Upanishadic description of Brahman is nedi, not this, not that. None of the categories. none of the limitations, right? So you have this interesting parallel, right? You have a God who is seemingly invisible. You can't seem to find this God. And you have an ego that is seemingly invincible because it occupies all the mental categories. But by dint of persistence and devotion, the persistence of the ego, it may not know exactly what it's doing, but it's persisting, and in the presence of devotion, something outside the normal categories emerges. Something which is both visible and invisible in some sense. Something out of the usual vision sort of comes, and it destroys the categories. In between the categories, it destroys the categories. There's something along those lines, right? So there is a kind of stilling of the mind that happens in inquiry, or in surrender for that matter, which is really just the other side of the coin from inquiry. There's a stilling of the mind, and there's a looking within. And that looking within is like that beating around the palace room, looking. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Something out of that, out of our usual vision, has to emerge from that persistence that cannot be fully imagined beforehand. There's another thing on this point which I want to mention, which is one of the texts supposedly written by Adi Shankara, the great compiler and synthesizer of Advaita Vedanta. It's a text called Vakya Vritti. And it basically recommends that if you're looking for the self, right, the place to look for it is between thoughts, right? Between thoughts, you still are. So expand that period between thoughts, right? It likens thoughts to pearls on a necklace, and there's a thread that connects all the pearls, right? So between the pearls, see the thread. Now, this is good advice, actually, but there is one proviso. What is this so-called space between the pearls? If you really examine the space between the pearls, it turns out to be another pearl, right? And you have to go smaller and smaller and smaller, right? The space between the pearls is a pearl, and you can break that into a tinier set of pearls with a tinier space between them, and that turns out to be a tinier set of pearls with the space between them, right? Where is the so-called space between pearls? These so-called spaces, when they are thought about, become thoughts. So what are they really? Can they really be understood? So when you go and you look for these spaces, they become subtler and subtler and subtler and subtler and subtler, smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Where is the space, right? To have that vicious, ruthless need to know, right? What is it? What is it? What is it? Right? This is again like Hiranyakashipu saying, where is God? Where is God? Where is God? Where is this Vishnu? So Vakya Vritti is actually a kind of subtle lead-in to this kind of riddle or enigmatic quality of self-inquiry, right? It makes it seem so simple initially. Yes, of course, just the space between thoughts, just expand that. Not recognizing in its text, but knowing that seekers who try this will encounter the fact that these spaces between thoughts are themselves thoughts that can themselves be broken down further. Because when you think about a space between thoughts, it's a memory. How do you know you've had a space between thoughts? You remember. That's a thought. So where is the space? Spaces are thoughts. It's just that they're subtler thoughts. So again, you look deeply into them, and what you want to get to is ultimately the quietude of mind through that subtle introspection, right? Through that laser beam introspection, through that squinting, through that concentration of looking that gets you out of the paradigm of pearl and thread entirely, that gets you out of the paradigm of thought and space entirely. You need that paradigm initially to identify subtler thoughts. What is a subtle thought will appear like a space to a less subtle thought. But if you really look, you go subtler and subtler and subtler. Because what is there has to be thread all the way through. So there is that which is being looked for, which can't be found in that way. And yet it can be found in that way, because when you look with enough intensity, with enough continuity, with enough concentration, with enough devotion, with enough curiosity, something breaks through. Something breaks through and solves a riddle in a way in which you couldn't have conceived. And that's the secret of self-inquiry.